Hey everybody, welcome to a soniclab presentation. It's about that time of year, which often happens around Black Friday because there are so many great deals out there that we took to Soundtoys. And we're here with Tony from Soundtoys, who's going to tell us a little bit about what's been going on there. I mean, one of the big things, I guess, Tony, is we now have M1 native, which is probably the biggest kind of jump there's been for a while, right?
Yes, because 5.3.8, the new version that just got released, is fully compatible on Mac OS Monterey, and we're testing Ventura right now. And so far, very, 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 very smooth.
Nice. Well, glad to hear it. So, what are the biggest advantages that we're getting of M1? Because I mean, those Soundtoys plugins, they're often part of everybody's kind of day-to-day tools. They almost become like channel strips to a lot of people, and I know a lot of people really just rely on them for lots of stuff, for saturation, for warming up, and also for kind of signature sound processing. But what are the biggest advantages? I mean, is there a much more efficiency? I mean, I don't remember them being that inefficient in the first place, but so tell me.
I'd agree so. I mean, part of it is we are striving to keep the sound the same, how the plugin behaves and how everything processes absolutely the same because, the same Echo Boy was used on Lady Gaga's Just Dance. We don't want that sound to change. And so part of it is writing the new coding and all the new languages into our software so that everything performs essentially the same. It does take a lot of work, and remember, Soundtoys came before a lot of other plugins out there, so we have quite a bit of vocabulary to go through in terms of for our software engineers to really, really efficiently translate it. The same way I think a lot of other software that might still be a little bit behind on the M1 compatibilities thing, I'd say that processing-wise, it's still really, really quick. It's still really efficient, and it is much more stable now that if you're in a large 60 tracks Logic, 60 plus track Logic session, you're trying to pull in different samples, different MIDIs, everything runs a lot more stable. And hopefully, as time goes on, when, other DAWs such as Pro Tools and other pro software that are finally coming to M1 native, then you can fully understand how powerful, like, you can add effect rack to pretty much every single channel you want to, and just have it as kind of a analog summing starting point.
Yeah, I guess we shouldn't discount the fact that lots of people are obviously working on PC DAWs, and they're fine too. It's just the Apple Silicon thing has been a kind of leapfrog in terms of performance for power kind of scenario.
Yeah.
So lots of people use Soundtoys almost as a front end. I mean, the saturation and the distortion, you often see them in a signal change, and that's part of the actual rack system that Soundtoys use, right?
Correct. So I just wanted to, talk about, for example, why would you go for Soundtoys effect rack specifically? Well, first of all, you get we have quite a bit of effects, and sometimes you don't necessarily want to buy everything. You just want to get the signature sound. So here's 14 of our full catalog. There are some more that are not included in effect rack, but here's just like pretty much everything you need from, let's see, Radiator, SIE-Q, Devil Lock, Decapitator, all of the dynamic EQ stuff, Filter Freak, Microshift, Panman, all these time-based imaging / delay, echo stuff, and Tremolator. So you get quite a bit of stuff that you can hear on records that were made from the 80s, from the 90s, from the 2000s. You can hear a lot of the signature effects, and you can recreate it with effect rack. And right now we have a Black Friday sales going on, so Soundtoys 5 is on very, very good discount, and everybody who gets the full bundle will get a copy of effect rack included. And you also get our entire catalog of 21 plugins that you can add individually. So for example, on my master bus here, not only am I using effect rack with my this is the little quick preset I made, I'll show it in a bit, and I also have a SIE-Q inserted afterwards as a standalone tone shaping EQ. So I think that it's one of those plugin sets that when you buy it, it gives you pretty much like, that like the crayon plate that every kid loves to have, all the different colors. This is like a really good, when you pay for it, you're going to use it for at least the next 5 years. I got Soundtoys back in 2018, 17 or 18. and I'm still using it, and it's still on every record I ever make. So I love using Soundtoys saturation, and especially some of the so let's just talk about the Decapitator, right? That's our signature saturation plugin, which comes with 5 different styles. You've got the A, which comes from the tube amp in the MPEX unit, and then you've got the E, which comes from the EMI console, famously worked on a lot of rock records, N for Neve, and T and P, which are the triode and pentode settings off of the Culture Vulture.
So is this on your master bus?
Correct. So, and I wanted to show off.
Yeah, let's have a before and after. Come on, let's just
let's have a before and after. So I literally, all I did was put together Decapitator on an A setting, some SIE-Q with a little bit of a roll off on the high and the low, and just some Radiator. This is really 3 plugins, right? And you see how I have no other things. Well, this is a little plate return effect, so it's not really on right now. So all I have right now on my master bus is effect rack, compressor, SIE-Q, and a limiter. And this is a quick dance track I put together last night using only Logic loops. And I wanted to do this. And again, I come from the GarageBand in the box generation, so I think a lot of our customers now are much more sample-based, loop-based. So we want to take into account that, yes, it's modernized, but Soundtoys 5, like an actual studio, it has its allure that we go for, which is that analog color. You would buy an SSL Neve console, you wouldn't just want to upgrade it 2 years later. You want to keep using it. Right. So I have been playing with a FET rack and see how it could beef up my process, speeds things up, make things sound loud, smashing, and analog colored, and just really get this whole thing took like maybe 20 minutes.
Right.
So I'm going to turn it on now.
Yeah, you can hear a bit of driving there, can't you? It's interesting, isn't it? Because it's actually already, because you're using loops, they're already kind of fairly well presented, shall we say. They
exactly.
presumably have a mastering phase. It's that extra little bit of, as we know, so many people listening.
All Apple loops, straight up from the library. Nothing, even this 909 is like the Apple Drum Machine Designer samples.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So it's interesting as a sort of master, like a master bus kind of effect. That would be separate to mastering. That just gives you
correct.
But you can hear the warmth. So is the Decapitator what's bringing in that kind of slight crunch and drive?
Yeah. Why don't we? I will deactivate all of it and let's just bring it in one by one and see what happens. So, and I wanted to make a point that part of the process that's really important is the workflow of how you would go about creating a track back in the mixing console days, which if anybody's worked in a studio and tried to mix a song from like literally patching things, that noise, saturation, and things are like there are imperfections that gets added into the signal as it travels through the entire mix chain, go down to the 2 mix bus and onto the tape.
Yeah.
So there is a sound that you're actually working towards or against, rather, sometimes when you're in the studio, that you're trying to find the right level to hit the console mix bus so that it saturates nicely without overdriving. Same thing with tape. You don't want to hit the tape too hard, because if you hit the tape too hard, everything gets overly magnetized, and you basically just get like a soft saturation sound. So part of it in the DAW world, in the digital world, since we are working with literally zeros and ones and it maxes out as 0 dB full scale, is, for example, if you're working at 24 bits, you get 144 decibels of dynamic range. Then, boom, when you're out, you're out. It's just white noise, right?
Yeah.
So, for me, having effect rack or having something like this analog summing on from the point I start bringing in my first loop, I'd like to turn it on, kind of just use it as like my gauge overall on my master bus, so that when I'm working in the sounds and all the different drums I'm pulling in, it's already reacting to the master bus preset that I'm using right here.
Right, and then you can always do an AB. I mean, I noticed you had AD limit on Logic there. I mean, that's something. It's funny, isn't it? I mean, I haven't used Logic for a long time, but I remember when I did, that's something I always used to put on. But it used to add a lot of latency, which was kind of a drag.
Yeah.
I guess these don't. I guess because it's look ahead. It's look ahead, isn't it? Whereas these don't. These aren't. The Soundtoys stuff isn't look ahead. It's reactive to what's coming in. So you don't introduce any latency or very little perceptible latency, right?
Correct. And also, I enjoy the fact that we've also got an input trim here,
right, in the rack
and an output trim. Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
So it's like you have multiple gain stage points. If you were like, okay, everything's too hot, just turn it down a little bit so it hits Decapitator, SIE-Q, and Radiator just a little bit less.
Right.
And I'm all for like when you're mixing, creating, hit everything just like 10% too hot and then back it off at the very end. Like, trust me.
Then you get the vibe when you're writing. Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And that's the thing. We're chasing magic. We're musicians. We're making music. We're not making, acoustic science. We're making music. So I'm chasing the feeling. Yeah. So let's check this out.
Let's listen to what's going through it. Yeah, let's have a look. So I can hear that adds just a low end bloom.
Exactly.
Really, rather, there's not much going on in terms of drive, but it's got a sort of slight low end saturation by the sound of things.
Yes, and notice that my drive is turned to just like 2 out of 10, because we have a punish button, for when you want to go extreme. Because if I turn the punish button on, it adds a significant amount of input gain. It sounds like this.
Yeah, that just sounds broken, right? On the full
right.
mix.
So I think that there is always like a balance between when it's too much and when it's just enough. So I was dialing it. I was like, and notice how the output button or the output knob is on an auto switch so that it gain compensates as I turn it.
Ah, neat.
Yeah.
That's neat.
Right? It's very nice. So what I've been doing was I basically, once I got the track down, I was like, yep, Decapitator. I love the A setting off of the MPEG tube amp. It's actually not the tape itself, but it's the tube amp in the tape deck. So It has a very warm sound to it. And I think that's where you get that low end, like the boom, boom. Yeah. Like that boom coming from. So yeah, so this is just on a very gentle, and look at the attitude meter. It's not even like over the red.
Yeah.
Right? So that's great. And, and if you're one of those like low end lovers and you want to just give it an extra kick boost, oh, by the way, you can click on all of our like name labels to see the actual value that you're dialing. And so I can, for example, use the low end button, turn the thumb on, which adds a high pass filter and has just a little bit of a resonance peak around whichever frequency you choose. So let's say for a dance track, I want to roll off like, everything below 60s and just give it a little like 3 dB resonance around 60 hertz. Let's check out what that sounds like.
That's really interesting. It's almost like a tilt EQ, isn't it? The way that you perceive it, because it's sort of it's adding an extra bit of boost down there,
and taking out the sub frequencies, so it's not changing the game, but emphasize exactly. It's very much Pultec like in a way.
Right.
So next up, let's try SIE-Q. So SIE-Q is a nice German EQ that we all love, and I, I think my thing about it is that the low and high knobs actually have customized curves when you boost it and when you cut it. So when you boost it, it adds a little bit of a bell curve, like an emphasis. And it's almost kind of like API. When the more you boost, the sharper that bell gets.
Right. Okay. So it's like a dynamic EQ curve.
Yeah, exactly. Like the more you
it's
boost,
control law, isn't it? As they say in analog engineering, right?
Yeah, exactly. So like I said, Soundtoys is all about honoring what has worked and what has been working great. And then when you turn it lower, so if you're like when you turn it to the left and you're cutting, it adds just a little bit of a high pass and low pass shape. So and the more you cut, the more aggressive the slope becomes.
But I'm guessing this is like a precision sort of mastering level type EQ. That's how you would consider it.
Yeah, you see, like, I usually use it on vocal, drums, and all that. But here I'm using it on the master bus, but I'm not really doing much besides, turning the low down to like two or three and turning the high down to 3. I just want to get rid of some of that crispy highs and the super boomy low.
Vintageizing it, I guess.
Exactly. And then turn the drive down a little bit to gain compensate.
Interesting. Sort of cleans it up a bit, doesn't it?
I think it's actually rolling off just a little bit too much. But yeah, so it's kind of like a general cleaning purpose. It's that, like, you add just a little bit of a high pass and low pass on mastering chain to get rid of some of that excessive, like trim the fat off of your steak before you cook it. Yeah. And again, I'm trying to balance as I go, trying to make sure my gain staging between the plugins are right so I can do a before and after without volume change as much as I can. But in this case, though, I am playing with... The reason why it sounded quiet was because I was actually playing SIE-Q going into Radiator. So by the time it was hitting Radiator, I had to turn the drive down by like a 2 dB or so to get Radiator to work better. So let's talk about Radiator. This is a great mixer amp, part of the LTEC 1567A. When you buy Radiator as like the individual license, you get 2 plugins, Radiator and Little Radiator.
Right.
So Little Radiator is the little brother that gives... It's not an effect rack, but it's a different LTEC amp that gives you like even more interesting but simple control because there's only like 3 buttons to worry about.
Right.
But Radiator, I love it as the last master bus plugin because it does 2 things for me. One, adds that bit of a 2-bus summing amp that you would normally get in the studio printing to 2-track. Second, I like that it kind of acts like a limiter. Not really. And when I say that, I mean that it's...
I guess it's what the valve would do. The valve will sort of squish the dynamic range, I guess.
Exactly. And you notice...
Right?
The clip, especially the peaks, are like much, much lower, but it retains the same loudness, which means the dynamic range has been squashed a little bit. But it becomes more in your face, which is what I like about it. So that's why my effect rack is before my first bus compressor and my limiter.
All right, let's have a listen. Yeah, that's actually adding quite a lot of drive.
Yeah, but what I want to point out is if we were to add a meter, let's just add like a peak meter real quick. Level meter, there we go. And let's check out the peaks before and after. We're hitting -2-ish. Now I'm going to turn effect rack on, reset.
Right, that's keeping it under. Yeah, it's keeping it under control. But you haven't actually got a specific dynamic.
There's no compressor. There's
compressor.
no, and that's the beauty of this, right? You're not even compressing. You're just using the old school analog, good old days like techniques to get it to sound great without compression.
So I
I
noticed that's got a dry and wet mix. I'd be really interested to hear you bring the wet in underneath that, because to my ear, for my taste, it's perhaps just a wee bit hot, and I wonder if there's a sweet spot in the middle there somewhere.
So note that we have a master mix button on the top of a fit rack, and on most plugins, like on Decapitator, Radiator, there's also individual mix buttons.
So like
I keep them on 100 wet for this purpose because it's acting 100% wet for the purpose of full saturation. But like you said, we could use the mix knob to turn it maybe a couple clicks down and see if that sounds better. And this is kind of the echoes to the thing I was talking about earlier about going a little bit overboard during the process so you can dial it back ever so slightly. Because the last thing you want is to be like, there's no heat, but you can't turn it up anymore.
Right.
So let's try turning the mix knob down a little bit as we go.
That felt good. It's about there, yeah. Interesting.
Right. So, and you notice that we gained like 2 dBs of headroom in that. Sorry, we gained 2 dBs of dynamic range back up by rolling it, just like 2 clicks down. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the thing I like about Radiator. It's that not only are we getting the sound of the saturation, we're actually doing proper gain staging and dynamic control to get that saturation. So now you have more room to turn your overall mix up. So when it hits the limiter, it's like, whoa, we are loud.
Yeah.
And I say loud because everybody loves loud. So
what's that recycle knob do? I've never seen.
So recycle, it basically feeds the signal back into through like a literal loop back into the signal. So it's really good if you want to overdrive the signal. This might not be the best preset to show it.
Okay, but it's like a feedback knob. So it's essentially
correct.
Right.
Imagine you have like a vocal going through a bunch of echo, delay, and then you
good
can
for
feed it
time-based
back
stuff,
into
I'd
self.
imagine. Yeah.
And you can automate that. That's the best part, is you can turn the recycle up. You know, if I were like, let's in the middle of the song, I just want to give it a little thing. So you can turn the automation on the track to touch. Playback. You know, just options.
That would make sense if you were doing a time-based thing, for sure. I can see
exactly.
How that would definitely work. Okay,
right.
right.
And it would come right here.
So are those the only other... So in terms of automation, within plugin, can you automate individual plugin parameters from within the rack as well?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Right.
All you have to do, again, I like using the touch or I like using touch more because touch allows me to play with a button, and then when I release my finger, it goes back to where it was. So let's try like driving this thing up in the beginning. And maybe you want to cut it off. And all of that, if we go read, turn the automation on, it would go right here.
Right. Okay. Yeah, neat.
Yep. And then you can individually create anything else if you want to. So yeah, most of the parameters, not all of them, there are things that you cannot, some of like the tweaks, some of the more advanced like tone shaping things, there are parameters that will not be able to automate, but most of it, just so that people are clear on what they can do with it.
So I know another thing that Soundtoys are really well known for, as well as the saturation and drive, are sort of harmonization and the stereoization and micro tuning and that kind of stuff. Have you got anything lined up for that?
Yeah. Oh, I was going to actually just build one with you.
Oh, cool.
So I was thinking, this lead, pretty mono, right?
Yeah.
Let's play with it. And in Effect Rack, this is where we can also demonstrate the recycle. So let's say, Echo Boy. So we all know that micro shift is based off of the Eventide H3000 harmonizer with some of the pitch algorithm like literally lifted out of the box. So like the three different styles are, two of them are from Eventide. I believe the third one is from a different unit. But this, just the default, will spread it out.
Yeah.
But, what if I don't want to use microshift? What if I want to use Echo Boy to make things stereo? This is the part where I love about Echo Boy, because even though it's a delay plugin, it's not really just delay if you think about it. It's actually, there's saturation, there's different styles. So, and if you hit style edit, you can see there's a further EQ section, diffuser, wobble, saturation. So it's not just delay. Right. It's actually single echo. There's 4 delays. There's literally 4 different delay algorithms. Single, dual, ping pong, and rhythm. So you get all of these plus style. And the thing is, if I just use, let's say, single echo, and I just want to use a tube tape, and I want no delay, so let's turn delay to 0 and turn it 100% wet. Now I actually get like the saturation that I can tweak with the width button here. This works really, really, really well on mono sources, by the way.
Right.
Right? So you can actually
use
Echo Boy to modulate things. So I'm going to use a couple different Echo Boys to create a quick sound, okay?
Okay.
So I'm going to spread it out using that, and let's just add let's add a little bit of delay. So I actually like to play with delays that are not in like the straight eighth notes, or I like the trips or dots just to see what it feels like. This is very, very extra. So maybe let's try 16th. Yeah, mix knob is really, really helpful,
nice. Yeah,
right?
That's nice, subtle there, yeah.
It's just a tiny bit, and I can drive the feedback in a little bit. And if you're like, okay, cool, now I just want to saturate the whole thing a little bit, boop, right there.
Yeah, that's a massive improvement.
Right? And sure, you know what? Let's keep adding Echo Boy. Sometimes I would have like 6 Echo Boys together, because why not? And if you're like, all right, cool, now I'm running out of ideas, I want to see what the presets can do, click this tweak button right there. There's a gear button. You can pop up the individual presets that you might have already worked on your Echo Boy. Like, exactly. So you can load all of the Echo Boy presets that you've got. So let's just use a reverb. Finite space. Let's just see that one. Now imagine all the things you can do with automation in real time. Let's recycle and see what happens. Nothing crazy, but I bet if I put a crystallizer on it, it's going to get crazy. Crystallizer, love it. It is a granular echo synthesizer that takes a chunk of your signal, samples it. You can either delay it the way it is, or you can reverse it and then delay it. And you can also pitch shift it. So it can create some crazy sounds. Like, I love like these octave crystal sounds.
It's so left and right.
But yeah, and my thing is, I highly believe in playing Effect Rack like an instrument. using automation, because at some point you can argue that the sound and what dictated just recording the sound of recorded music is the fact that there was like the Beatles telling them, or sorry, Queen tell Freddie Mercury be like, no, you gotta pan this to the left and then pan it to the right in real time. You gotta like tell people where to pan it, and it's like that time-based journey. I mean, even just putting the drums on the very left and the vocal on the very right was a design that like shocked people. So I like to consider using all of these different knobs as my instrument when I'm creating sound. And we're talking about sound design 2022, which is very on point with the modern sound design pop music creating process.
Well, yeah, that's it. I mean, with sort of modern pop, it's the you know, the Rick Rubin philosophy has really kind of come to the fore. It's like, what's it, 4 or 5 elements max. So each of those elements has to really occupy and own the space that it's given. Right?
6 elements here.
6.
Actually,
okay.
That's not even true. It's more like you've got your groove, just like a topper. Yeah. So it's really just rhythm, a bass, and a synth.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really think that with Soundtoys, I mean, last night I had so much fun creating this, and I still am jamming to this. It took me 20 minutes, and I just had to put on the effect rack, put 3 plugins on, and just go to town. Just let my creativity take flight. And that's what I love about working with Soundtoys. It's especially with the M1 native, like now I can, so Logic is currently running 10.7.5 fully in native mode. And it just works like, I don't even know how to describe it, but I can say that I have noticed that I don't have to think about what I'm doing as much as I used to, or think about the technical side of it as much as I used to. Now it's more about putting the effect rack on, play with my music, let it hit the mix bus, just feel like I'm back in the studio, and it helps me make better decisions and get the vibe really quick.
Yeah, it's interesting the way that you, like you say, you kind of put the mix bus in place and then work to that. It's very much like the SSL way of working, isn't it? Where the bus compressor, the mix would be mixed to that. Whereas with this, I guess,
yes,
you've always got options like that. But with that many elements within the effects rack, you could really tinker with that gain structure and the way that it hits hard or doesn't.
Exactly, and I think that effect rack, you know, as the first step here with saturation, a little bit of a filtering, like it's not even boosting anything. At most, it's boosting the 1K, just like 1 dB, just to balance things out a little bit. And Radiator is actually bringing back some of that bass and treble, because I like the way it's like once you take out some of the harshness and then boost it back up, it's cleaner that way, kind of in a very controlled fashion. So just 3 plugins gets me my color, and then I can play with the compressor. So, and I like using Logic's compressor because it's got an auto gain button that can like bring everything automatically to 0 dB. And you notice that I already have a limiter in Logic on right here in the compressor, and then send that to SIE-Q, which is taking just a little bit of that like distorted top end off as you start to smash things. Yeah.
So of course this is all of the stuff that you've been showing us is available now, and as you say, you've got loads of Black Friday kind of deals. Yeah, on sale.
Yes. You're going to be able to get Soundtoys 5, and for the first time in years, we're finally putting upgrades on sale as well. So for anybody who's already owned either a few Soundtoys plugins or like Effect Rack, you can go into your Soundtoys account and see that you have a personalized coupon to upgrade, and that entire upgrade price has been discounted too. So make sure that, you know, log onto your Soundtoys account and email the support from Soundtoys website if you're missing any plugins, because I do understand that some people might be, you know, buying secondhand licenses or off of different websites. So we want to make sure everybody can take advantage. So just to make sure that you have all the plugins you already use, and then you should see a very, very, very discounted price for the upgrade. And I love it because like I said, I personally bought Soundtoys back in 2016 or 17. I've just been using it since today, and it's...
Well, Tony, thank you so much for showing us around the way that you use Soundtoys. And don't forget, folks, you can check all of that out at Soundtoys for the Black Friday deals, and they do Christmas stuff as well. So you're never very far away from a Soundtoys sale, right?
Yes. No, and we are very easily searchable online, soundtoys.com. I mean, soundtoys.com. How easy is that?
Excellent. I'll take it away.